Yes, David.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome inside the coach's room.
Good morning. Thanks very much for having me.
Well, it's our pleasure. I think you are one of the most all-rounded guys we have so far.
Oh,
Going from academy coach to recruiting specialist to being a sports director. We had sport directors, we had academy coaches, never recruitment specialists. So interesting to hear this point of view as well. So I'm pretty interested to hear what your story and your experiences are.
Great.
And you have been in a lot of offices, a lot of elite offices, great clubs you've worked for. What is the most important item that was in all those offices?
Yeah, really good question. I suppose the most important thing to me was always a picture of my daughter and my family. That kind of, whichever office I was in, I had the, good fortune of working in the offices where it was at Tottenham and, Huddersfield, where I could oversee the pitches and watch the players train. Very good. But the picture always to me reminded me of my safe place.
Okay.
Keeps me grounded, keeps me focused on what I'm actually doing this for. Obviously for myself and to try and bring success to the club. But yeah, for me, that just makes me feel happy that I'm actually doing the job that I'm doing, and it keeps me in a good place.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So not a laptop or for example, a scouting formulaire or form or whatever. No, the picture of your family.
Yeah, I mean, in offices, it's always good to have the essentials, your laptop, your TV, and maybe a tactics board and other essential stuff. And they're all very good tools to have. But that would be my tool that I can transfer to each office's wherever I go. So
yeah, great. Okay, you said, and this keeps me reminded of the things or the reason that I'm doing this for your environment or maybe for your close ones as well. Well, is that the reason? Of course, you love football. That's why you started. But
yeah,
what's the connection with, let's say, your family and the purpose that you have in football?
I think I think all the time that as we're in like an elite environment in football at the highest levels, when you have perspective from yourself and from your family to know that you've got good people around you, it can be sometimes very stressful. It can be sometimes very demanding of your time.
Yeah.
So when you have that support and when you have that people that really care about and people that you can lean on and chat to, and that they're sacrificing their own selves to to allow me to pursue my career at stages. So it just I'm grateful for that. So and that keeps me sort of very grounded, very humble, and very focused. Because without that, without that, it'd be the job would be a lot harder to do.
I think I'm starting to understand. So the stress, yeah, it's a stressful job in football. Whether it's fun or not, it's always pressure.
Always, yeah, always.
And when you come home, your daughter doesn't care if you win or lose or if the signing is paying off or not. They just want a hug. That's kind of what you mean, I think, with this story as well.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one with the family because I think sometimes it's especially from the kids' perspective, like you say, they don't care if you win or lose. We've had a bad day. They're in their own little world, and sometimes even though I try and take that into my working environment to realize everyone that comes in, I see it like a little movie. So everyone's I'm playing a part when I go to work. I'm playing a part in everyone's movie. They got their own focuses, their own targets, their own aspiration and dreams and stuff they need to do for the day. And we're just sort of passing through for all that. So you have to be aware of that. And the same with family as well, especially when you come home to your kids, all they care about, maybe if you have little ones, is, about you playing with them, like say a hug, spending time, reading, watching something. And you're playing a role in their world. They don't care whether you've lost a game 3-0, you've won the game 3-0, whether you've had a good day, bad day, it's irrelevant. And I try and keep that in my head, when I'm dealing with this, and it just gives me a little bit more perspective. And probably learned to evolve into that, especially over the last 6-7 years. Finding a way of keeping calm and focused, and keeping it realistic.
Do you think we should get results and that pressure more out of the equation in football?
Yeah, I think in any elite environment, you're always going to have the pressure. That's whatever your team is, whatever you're looking to achieve, you've always got pressure. You have to win games. That's a given. There's never gonna. That's the life of football. It's never going to change no matter what country you're in. But I think there's a way that you can manage yourself in that environment, especially during stressful times. If you're maybe in a relegation, a transfer, you're challenging for stuff, you just want to develop, whatever your environment is, you're going to face some pressure periods. And I think if you can enter those pressure periods as being as calm as you can and being good with yourself and keeping stuff around you good, i.e. like a good family, then the less stress you've got outside your life, the more focused and the better performance you can bring to your working environment as well. So it's important, I think, it's worked for me anyway, to keep that side, those relationships from the closest people good, and that enables me to, deliver on a higher level into my roles.
Yeah. So let's say the picture helped you, keeping that stress out of your system, maybe.
Yes.
Was there a way that you try to keep out the stress out of the system with the coaches that you worked with or players that you worked with, that you, no matter what happened on Sunday, on Monday, there was a way that you approached them that they wouldn't be they didn't feel too much pressure at that point, that you had kind of way of interacting with them that took it away?
Yeah, and I think it's just keeping things realistic. In football, you're going to win, you're going to lose. That's a fact. There's never no guarantee of you winning every week or losing every week. So I think if you keep things realistic, then you can approach these situations like with coaches, with players after the results, whether it's a good result, a bad result, a result that should have gone our way, there was some injustice, whatever the situation is. I think if you keep it realistic and try and keep the focus on what you're looking to achieve, and try to get, especially in a sports director role, the coaches and the players and the staff to try and keep focused and stay calm and realise that it's over a long period of time that you're going to lose games.
Yeah.
You're going to win games. You obviously want to win more than you lose. That's a fact. But you have to keep going and keep being focused and try and just be realistic with expectations that is a fact. You're going to lose. You're going to win.
Yeah. It's interesting how we all know that this is the process to go, and we all try to do our maximum effort during the week.
Yeah.
But then there's this thing in football that you can do everything right, but still not win the game, or still doesn't go your way.
Yeah.
And you have to think, okay, this is not my part that I can influence. It's out of my circle of influence. Yeah,
and that's the bit. That's always key. I think if you can get into those sort of mindsets early, then when it is a setback or it is a bad loss or there was some injustice in the preparation, the work, the game, the training, whatever it was, that it's not a long-term effect. It's a short-term effect. It's realistic. It's life. Life doesn't always go the way we want, and we have to keep going again, because tomorrow's a new day, and we just have to go again and refocus. But it's also good to allow people to have that emotion out of their system as well. So if it is an injustice, if it is a loss, if it is something, then they can get that stuff out of their system, re-energize, refocus, and go again. So it doesn't, I'm a big believer, it doesn't linger on too much.
Oh, true. When did you start realizing that this is a major key? Because if I look back at my coaching career, and I can imagine a lot of young coaches and you when you're starting out as well, you think, well, at least you have the feeling that you can control everything. Because all your tactical decisions or your choices, who you put in the pitch, those are the best things. But at one point, you're going to realize, I can only bring them so far, and then it's up to them and also the opponent and whatever happens.
Absolutely. Yeah, I suppose that came with, I first started coaching in 2002, so it's 20 years ago with an academy, and working with sort of various age groups, you get to learn through experience. Because sometimes when I first started, I used to feel this big pressure, even though it was a development environment, and that was the thing. There was still sort of probably in pressure in terms of sometimes maybe the results, or sometimes, there was a lot of pressure on myself to perform, to make sure I'm doing the best by the players, to make sure I'm doing the best by the club. And if we lost games or if the games didn't go well, then, personally, I'd take it very, very hard.
Yeah.
And it used to take me a long time to recover. So, like, mentally. And over time, I learned to slowly reduce that, like the recovery time. I did a master's in sports psychology to understand psychology, and I felt that was a vital ingredient to be at elite level, not only for the players and the club, but for myself. So once I got more educated and a little bit more experienced, and also undertaking different roles was good as well.
Yeah,
because it gives you a learning experience how you analyze, how you recruit, how you're looking at people, how you're looking at players. And I think that was my ultimate objective over my career, was to try and be good in a number of subjects like recruitment and coaching, and psychology and performance was a big one for me as well. So if I could get a real good understanding of those three at this level, then I thought that might hold me very well in my future.
It kind of all comes together in your last roles as a sporting director, where you have to know coaching, you have to know players, you have to know football, but you also have to know psychology and recruitment. So everything is kind of it's almost logical that you ended up there. But
and it does help. And I think when you have got that little bit more experience, and when you have got that acquired knowledge of learning those areas over a long period of time, it does give you an assurance and a confidence, that you've earned that right to learn all that over a number of years. So when you're coming into these situations, especially in a sporting director situation, when it comes to setting up departments, working with ownership on philosophies, working with coaches every day, working with different people from the medical science, analytics, the ladies team, recruitment. When you're working with all these specialists from different areas, it does give you a broad understanding of the subjects you're learning, because that's essentially part of the role. Recruitment is a very high aspect of it. You have to know the market, you have to know the club, you have to know how to negotiate when it comes to that time. You have to know how to recruit into that environment, not only players but the right staff and people. So all these areas that I learned when I was younger, growing up through the industry, I think that's and I'm still learning now. I'd never stop learning. It's still got loads to go.
Yeah, and what part of that psychology study that really that really helped you in that early part of your career? Because at one point you thought, okay, I need to add this to my skill set. That's also interesting, because you've been on the pitch, you've been in the environment, and at one point you think, okay, this is not enough. I need to know more about humans, or I need to know more about social interaction, whatever.
Yeah, I kind of, ever since I was young, I kind of always had an interest in sort of people and different cultures, an interest with travel, and like just a real interest from, different parts of Europe and different parts of the world. So, I was fortunate enough in some of my roles to travel to some really interesting places. So I think once you've got for me, well, once I had an understanding of maybe, some different cultures and seeing how different people operate in their countries. And I think in terms of adaptability, when you're recruiting for first team level, it gives you an idea if a player comes from, so if I was recruiting at Tottenham, for example, when they're coming into the Premier League, I've got an idea of the culture in France, Germany, Ireland, Portugal, South America. Not an expert in them, but I can understand some of the things that, maybe will help them transition into our environment better. So having that real understanding of that, because I think that's part of the key. That's part of the key, that part of that process, because obviously the players got the talent, they're good enough to be here, they've earned the right on their football ability, which is all very good. But to enable them to continue that ability in that upward trajectory, then you have to make sure that you know as much about them, so they're valued as professionals. If they're valued as professionals, then you're going to get more out of them on the pitch.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, just for the listeners, your last job was at Huddersfield, but before that you worked in Sweden.
Yes.
You did some work in Germany at Leverkusen.
Yes.
If I'm correct. It was also Sevilla. I don't know the Portuguese club actually, which you worked for, but and a lot of clubs in England. So you've been around the European football clubs or market industry, whatever you can call it, and it helped you, especially maybe in that elite recruitment phase, that you were talking to players. Okay, I can kind of relate where you're coming from. I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I've spent some time in your environment, so I kind of know what your background is. What got me thinking is every coach has this at his own level. You of course at an elite level when there's money involved and when there's maybe also a little bit of a sales part, because maybe there are different clubs and everybody's fighting maybe around that one player or whatever. But as a coach, you have this in a different perspective. You have your 15 players who all come from a different background. Maybe it's the same city, but one of them lives in the suburbs and one of lives in uptown, whatever.
Yeah.
Rich dad, poor dad, whatever, how you want to call it. You also have to know who you're working with and what their background is, or maybe they are immigrants, whatever.
Yeah, and it helps, and it really does help, because collectively you're all training together every day. You know, you're all doing the same training. You want to, get a good collective feel from a team spirit and a unity. But you're not going to get that unless you understand the individuals you're working with. You can't expect them to work with a team and say this is the platform to work with a team if you don't know what's behind the people, or at least have a good understanding to where we are. Because there's situations where if you're asking them to commit to a philosophy, a project, a style of play, then the more you know about them, the more that they know about them.
Yeah.
The more they will do in return. For me, it's a very simple.
It's a nice detail that the more they know that you know about them. So if they feel that you have invested in them,
yes,
and that's all. Well, from your sporting director's role, it's even more important, because you can be there like this high up manager who walks around the club maybe once every day. But if they feel that you are connected to, let's say, the physiotherapist, the first team staff, but also the cleaning guy and the people from the restaurant, then they feel this is something that we're going to fight for the same goal.
Everyone, and this is the most important thing. I think it's sometimes where it's sometimes missed in elite football, that everyone that plays a role in the club, like you say, to the cleaning lady, to the chefs, to the cooks, maybe someone on the gate as you come in the morning. Yeah. Everyone associated with the club, if you can know a little bit about someone, a little bit about them each day, maybe they have a family, maybe they have an interest, maybe they have something that, you want them to feel that about them a little bit. It's like anything. Everyone will feel a bit more special if they think, oh, he actually knows that about me. That's quite good. They don't expect it sometimes, and it's a good thing. And I think then all them little bits make the club feel a bit more together,
connected.
Connected, and everyone can talk to each other, and have a conversation, and no one feels there's no click. So the players can talk to anyone. They don't have to just talk to each other. They can talk to the chef, the cleaning lady, someone, the secretary, someone in a different department, and still have a normal conversation with them.
Yeah. Was there a routine or a way that you tried to do that every day, or you had like a circle that you walked, whatever? But I don't know. Was it a way that you tried to create this?
Yeah, I think so. When I was at Huddersfield, I had a nice big office. I overlooked the training ground. It's very nice to maybe sometimes get too comfortable and sit in there. But you've got everything there. You've got a big TV. You've got the laptop. You have a coffee machine outside. It's very easy just to stay there. But for me, when you're in that type of role where so many departments you're liaising with and you're working with. It's important to go and visit them in their environment. So if it was the medical, go down and talk to them when they're working with the players. If it was the chef, go over to them and, after breakfast, spend a few minutes with them having a chat. I try to do little things like that. And the recruitment guys, don't always everyone come to you. You go to them. It wasn't, I didn't want like they come to me, sit across the desk like I'm the boss type of thing.
Yeah.
They know that my role is a sporting director. They know my role, so you don't have to keep, reiterating that. You can go to them, talk to them, what's happening, what's going on, get some communication. So each day was different. I didn't have like a set walk or anything like that.
I understand.
Yeah, but so yeah, depended on the day. But I did try to get out and talk to as much as staff as I could.
Yeah, that got me thinking, because I know you are interested in lots of areas outside of football as well. I don't know the specific story, but you hear this story that the CEO of huge companies, that they have 2 times, or they have a coffee in the canteen where everybody was, they had a lunch, just to be around everybody, and that they would be approachable for everybody, and they didn't have to go to the office, knock on the door. No, he would be on set times in the restaurant where everybody would eat, even though he was the founder or CEO or whatever. You hear this kind of stories all the time, which makes it almost natural. Oh no, and it's a routine to connect with everybody around you.
Yeah, I think we have a duty to do that as well. I think we have a duty to do that when we're in these leadership roles, especially in elite sport and football. It's a duty to, just to people see you, to have a connection. They see you, they know your role, but they can see you, like you say, having a coffee in the lunch area. Even at Huddersfield, I didn't have even for my lunch, if I went over for lunch, I didn't have a set time. I'd go over, whoever was sitting down, whether it was physios, whether it was academy, the girls team, recruitment, wherever it was. If there was I'd sit with anyone and have my lunch and have a conversation. I mean, it wasn't right now, I have to sit next to the manager. I have to sit next to the CEO or the director.
Yeah.
I sit with anyone. And I think, that makes, because also if you're expecting, for me, I'm expecting them to, do their job to a high level, do their best for the club, then they can see me being relatable to them. I'm doing what they're doing. I'm trying to do the best in my role as well. So if I'm being demanding and they don't see me, or they don't do this and I'm not very good, then, I'm not going to get the best out of, the team. So
yeah. I also read that, well, the identity of the club is a big foundation of how you execute your job, or which type of people you recruit, or which type of players.
Yes.
This is also a way to get to know the identity? Because of course you can have the presentation of the board. Okay, this is who we are, but you find the identity in, let's say, for example, in the cafeteria when you're talking to the people that are already working there for 15 years.
Yeah,
you find the true working atmosphere, the true identity almost.
Yeah, very much so. And when I was at Huddersfield, that was very important, because especially when we went to come to recruiting a coach, because in my what happened was I was tasked with, unfortunately, the coach was sort of dismissed quite early on.
Yeah. So 2-3 months you were there, you had to appoint a new coach, right?
Yeah. So basically, I started in August 2019. I wasn't due to start till a couple of months later because of being released from my current role at the time, was Östersunds.
Yeah.
So once the results, Huddersfield come down from the Premier League. Once the results hadn't sort of going too well, the new ownership made the decision prior to my arrival to change coach. Because of my role, they wanted me to be a big part in the recruitment process of finding a new coach. So it was a lot of information to take in at once. So they managed to come to a negotiation with Östersund and release from my contract if they paid a little compensation early. So I had basically
minus 2 months to find a coach.
Yeah. And the first thing I had to do was, obviously you have to take so many factors into consideration all at once. But the most important thing was was to actually spend time in the area, and look at the fans and look at the things and what type of coach had been relatable, what worked before, the new environment, the new ownership. There was loads of stuff, and the only way you do that is spending time in the area, spending time with the people, and getting to know that. You want coaches that can connect here. They have to connect straight away because the club's in a situation where they need results.
There's no time. Yeah.
No time. So we need that instant connection. So that was part of the thinking towards the appointment of the coach.
Yeah, interesting. And what were you looking? What kind of trait are you looking for then in people?
Yeah, so this one, and looking for someone that's got. We looked at a number of factors in terms. Once we've all the footballing stuff and the results.
Yeah, sure.
So we wanted someone that the coaches that had a very good youth background. That was a big part of that youth background in terms of they developed youth at their previous clubs because we knew that was going to be our philosophy going forward. So that was important. Someone also as well that could connect with the outer community. And we wanted that to build that connection because Huddersfield was like what we call like a working class area.
Yeah.
So coaches that have had that don't mind doing that work, going out into the community, whether it be to schools, to hospitals, or sometimes building that connection that was comfortable with that, as well as all the football stuff. So that was another big way of our thinking because we thought if we can get that connection outside and bring it inside, then obviously that's going to help. It's going to help us in our current situation.
Yeah, and it could also help, let's say, in the short run where everybody, when the sentiment is negative, and even though the results could even stay the same, but at least the people see that, or the fans see that there's connection with the environment, and that there's a new, let's say, new type of leadership. That's strategical choice probably there as well.
Yeah. Definitely.
Okay, and is it something that this was a specific Huddersfield situation, but do you think in any case or in any club that this is an important trait that you realize in what kind of environment you are?
I think it's one of the key traits, and it's always worked in the environments I've been in. I've always tried to sort of implement this or take this, or if I wasn't been able to influence it, then it's already in place. I think it's one of the key things that, especially, I think it's just, I worked on a very simple analogy of, understanding, especially if you're going to bring someone into your environment, understanding where they've come from, understand what you bring them into. And that's players first and foremost, obviously, because they're the heartbeat of the club, but also staff, the team behind the team, as well, is very important. And I think that's just for me, that's just a given.
Yeah. Any advice how coaches should connect with that idea? Because, in youth football, you start with probably your local club that you've played, and there's a connection already there. But maybe if you're ambitious, you go to that next big club, 10, 15 miles away or 15 kilometers away.
Yeah.
Then that's the first step as a coach that you have. Any advice how you should connect with that environment? How would you suggest a coach step into a new environment?
I think for in anyone, especially a young coach, if they can enter that phases of their journey, then it's to understand the environment they're going into, is to research as much as they can.
Okay.
Whether they're going into a youth coaching role, a first team role, a local role, it doesn't matter. Treat every role the same. Yeah. Give it the same respect as you're going to go in, because then that will breed habits for when you go on further and you go higher. If you can get the good habits in early of your preparation and getting to know as much as you can about the environment, or maybe some of the staff or the local area, some of the culture, some of the traits, if you get to know that and get a good understanding of that early, then it becomes habitual when you go higher.
Interesting. Is that something that you've done, or that you found out early on, that you've done straight away?
Yeah, I kind of just, when I was younger, my first role was...
You are kind of a natural searcher, because you search around the clubs, but you also search for players. It's a trait of you, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And it was just, I remember my second coaching role was at Crystal Palace Academy back in 2003. And because I lived in that area, I was quite, I knew the local area, the local club. But when I noticed when I went into the academy that the way they was recruiting young players, they had a lot of areas where you could get a lot of natural talent. We call the street kids.
Yeah.
Now it's probably very big now. But back in then, it wasn't so big. The way they recruited was the young talent from the best. They just only looked at the best teams. So the best teams playing locally, best player in that best team. They thought we must be the best, so we bring him into, a professional environment. Where my thinking was, this is, I didn't have a I had a good upbringing, but it wasn't, from the areas I lived in, I knew that there was loads of sort of street kids and rough talent that, probably wasn't playing in these local best teams, wasn't in these environments. So even when I was academy coach and I started to look, even on my time off, I was only part-time coach, but I tried to treat it like as a full-time role, and I used to try and go out and find local talent in different areas, and we managed to get some good players from that, like Zaha come from that setting. There's other players that have come from that setting, and it kind of opened the door, a little bit now to the thinking. I think where, because I understood the local environment and local areas and local culture, that I was able to use that knowledge to help me, help the club, help the players. So that kind of got my way of thinking in each new club I go into, whether it be a different part of the country, whether it be in a different country, to try and get as much information as I can for when I go in there. So I'm not going in, my first thing was not going in cold. I don't know nothing what I'm going into, because then you're immediately under pressure straight away, because you're thinking, I don't know this, I should have done this. Just spend a little time. That's your career, that's your job.
Yeah,
just spend a little time researching.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. So even if you take that 15-mile step from club A to club B, there's still a lot of differences in history of the club, or people that work there, or type of clubs, playing style. There's so much you can already dig up before you even sign.
Yes.
But also after you're signed, you can still do the work.
Yeah, absolutely. That prior knowledge before you go in gives you the first couple of steps to understanding, and once you're living it and breathing it every day, then you will pick up lots more. As long as you keep an open mind to it, as long as you think, right, okay, I'm just here to do my job and then go home, then you can't expect too much.
No.
If you have an open mind and you want to meet people, chat to people, learn more about what you're doing, increase your own knowledge, increase other people's knowledge, then you've got more chance of being successful.
Yeah, and also here, okay, you were at Crystal Palace where you kind of started, and then this is the way they do it, but I'm going to look at out of the box. I'm going to look in areas that they didn't explore.
Yeah,
it's interesting because you also take a risk, because if you find, well, in this case you found Zaha, but you also realize, okay, if I find this street kid, he can be the best dribbler ever, but he's going to have troubles to fit into a team, and he never played according any team rules, or he's not used to listening to a coach. So this process is going to take a lot more energy and probably a lot more time as well.
Yeah, and that's where you have to, I think, as a club, realize that if you did get the young talent early, then they're especially in an academy environment. Wilfred was 10 at the time, so
still pretty moldable, but okay, there was a rough diamond there probably.
Yeah, and he's got loads of time to learn, and you don't want to coach it out of him too early.
Nope. You completely agree. Yeah,
you want him to understand maybe some more, give him a more understanding, but still let him do what he's good at. That's what got him there in the first place. You encourage him to take risks and be brave and dribble past players and do all that stuff, even if it's not sometimes. And I found that when it was younger, a lot of younger coaches were more about the team shape and the structure and stuff. And 10, 11-year-olds, they don't really understand that. What they want is, that they want to express their self. So you give them a basic platform to work from. So you're developing them, their skills, their understanding, but you're also not taking away what their best talents are.
Yeah. Have you been in the position that, well, you found a talented player. It doesn't even matter how old they are. Could even be an adult player. You find him, he has these specific traits. He is this outstanding player in his own environment, maybe different culture where they are much more creative. And you add him to the club or to the team, and then he's almost flattened out by the tactics of the coach, and they come to you. So why is he not performing?
No, I have had that, and I think when I look at that, I look at it in a way that it's not so much the player, maybe it's the coach's understanding of the person.
Yeah.
And again, if even at youth level or professional level, I still think there should be a connection, even if it's a young player under 11, under 12, under 13. If you knew what kind of area he come from, as a roughly, maybe the type of school he goes to, if he has a different culture or religion, when you got them basics understands, then you can get to understand that, okay, he might need more time to develop, or he or she might need more time to, to understand this situation. So I'm not gonna impose things just because I want him to fit in a certain way. I want to win all the games. It makes me look good. I can move up the age groups. I can get a better job. If you've got that intention, it's never really going to work long term for you, because you're going to find that doesn't work. If you invest in time in that particular talent early on, and it might take, there's no set time, is it? It might take 2 months, it might take 3 months, it might take a year, could happen in 2 weeks. But I think you've got to be open to the mind that, okay, this is going to take some time. Yeah. How much time, I don't know, but it's going to take some time.
Yeah, and everybody should be allowed to have that time, coach and player.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It works both ways for the players and the coaches. If I look at my role as a sporting director, if I'm going to look to bring in a coach, and this is the way we want to work within our structure, I'm not going to say, right, I want instant results straight away. It's you would allow that coach maybe some time to develop, a good amount of time. What that time is, there's no set time, but
I can understand.
If you give the coach that time, and you've got that connection and that understanding, then the more chance you've got of, him being allowed to develop what's going on.
Yeah, and that's in any situation, because we were talking about Manchester United situation before we started this. We can go into there also, the background of coaches there, but this is also in your local team. If you are the new U17 coach and you feel the pressure of the technical director of whatever, head of youth, that you need to perform and you need to perform now, you're going to act differently towards your players, which makes you can all fill in the blanks. But it's a different situation. Then you realize I heard, we'll go back to Manchester United after that, because I'm thinking about this right now, that at AZ Alkmaar, I heard they give a coach a full-time contract straight away, even though if you're in foundation phase or whatever, and you get at least 2 years to adjust to the way of working. And after 2 years, they're going to properly evaluate you and see if the potential is still there. So from day one, you have, let's say, 730 days to start fitting in, which is a reasonable amount of time, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
And then the judgment comes. Okay, this is a performance situation still.
Yeah.
But that I found that very refreshing, because you don't hear it too often. And it was also very, I don't know if it's true in detail, but the concept I liked. And it's very clear. I have 2 years to adapt, to get it to make it my own. And then from there on, I need to perform. Yeah.
And that's a very good way of working, especially in the youth systems, because it also, for me, it's clarity. So the coach knows, right, okay, I have this time to work, and it might seem like a long period of time, 2 years, but it can go so quickly. So I maximize this as much as I can, and then from the club's point of view, at the end of it, if it works and it's and it's worked great. That's fantastic. That's what you want. But sometimes if it doesn't work, then I think always from the club's perspective, we can say, well, we did give you that time.
Yeah.
We've been more than fair, and it hasn't worked. And I think there's a good understanding from both parties. Then.
Yeah. I thought it as well. There was a guy, one of the new coaches there, who told me the insights, and also that you're given you a full-time contract straight away, which especially for young coaches is a big step, because a lot of them are fighting for that full-time spot.
Yes.
Well, I read about you that there was also one of your highlights to be full-time in football. It was almost a goal.
Yes.
Which also means that if you're not full-time, you have to squeeze in your schedule, make some money here and there, maybe do an extra club. So there's different kind of focus.
Yeah, and sometimes, even though it's hard, sometimes it's quite exciting, because even when I was part-time coaching at Crystal Palace and Tottenham in my early parts of my career, I had a little bit more increased responsibility, but it still wasn't enough to pay the bills. So you had to do other jobs, and it was trying to find other jobs to keep my focus in hand. That, okay, football is my long-term goal. So the jobs that I'm going to do now it was kind of weird. It was they had to fit in around the football.
Yeah.
And I just see the jobs as a way of earning money, paying the bills, doing this sort of thing, and that was it. And that was it. And I just kept the focus that way, knowing that I'm going to go full time in football. Whatever I'm doing now will just be a means to an end.
Yeah, it was an investment in your later career.
Yeah, and that's how you have to see it. It's an investment in yourself. So the job you're doing to support your career, and again, this comes back to the family piece as well, where at the time, if you've got that support around you to allow you to do that, these are the little things that will hold a long way when you go up.
Yeah.
The higher you go up, the more you value these, because it's always important to know where you was at the start of your journey.
Yeah. Okay, I already touched up on it a little bit on Manchester United and Rangnick, who's now the head coach there, and his background that you found interesting. And what would be the ideal? What would be ideal path for a coach to go towards? Would you be a former player? Should you be more from a manager's role to a coaching role, or should you be a coach? Interesting discussion. So, what was your ideas on this?
Yeah, very interesting. Really interesting. If we, with someone like Ralph, his background was, he started off with coaching and went into sort of management, becoming a head coach focal point. And then when he entered the sport and director phase, his whole background was coach and development, and he had a set way of working and a style. He wanted this style. So his background was pure coaching, coming into a sport and director role, which is having that understanding of that top level of how a coach works, how development works, working with young players.
Yeah.
All very, very massive, important key roles. And then you can look at maybe another sporting director's background might come in from recruitment.
Like yourself?
Yeah, like myself, who's been head of recruitment, and understand the markets, understanding where the players are, understanding that I could go to most clubs and adapt quite quickly.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting one, and I think it all depends on the club. I wouldn't say there's one shoe that fits all, one size that fits all. I think it all depends on the club's needs and objectives.
Yeah, but what I do hear, and also about your story, is that, and not only you, but as a coach, you need to broaden your perspective. So
Absolutely.
If you only think about the players on the pitch, there's so much more out there in football, or even outside of football, that is going to help you in this environment. And whether it is business life, we had Andro Vistunic from Croatia. He was a deputy manager of the academy there, and he was getting all types of processes from IT that would help him in football. Or he was talking to CEOs. Okay, how do you lead? And I think that's kind of there. There's different paths that lead you to being a manager or a head coach or whatever. But you if you only focus on one thing, you're missing out too much.
I think so. I think so. Especially in these roles of a head coach or a sporting director, I think one of the key ingredients you have is the way you are with people. How you are with people is good, really good to have a good knowledge of your field, whether it be intimate coaching, a high level recruitment, and all these stuff. But if your communication and your people skills are not at the foremost of what you do, then you could have the best tactical knowledge in the world. If you can't convey that to your players, then it doesn't matter how good you are. The same in other areas. So I think those are the key ones, and the more we all learn, like of different businesses, of different companies, different cultures, different sports, different people. It's like being an ideas thief. We take the ideas from other people and we see if we can use that in our own environment. We see something and think, you can see something from chess, you can see something from your business, your IT, from a mathematician, anything. You think, okay, I can use that. I can use that. I can use that. So, if you're a good idea thief, it definitely helps as well.
What's the last idea that you stole?
I read the last idea I stole was, I would say, was probably something that I read from a book about chess.
Okay,
and it was about strategy, about playing over a long period of time and having multiple outcomes.
Okay.
So when I was looking at chess, he looked at it as
almost like scenario thinking. Is that kind of what it is?
Yeah, multiple scenarios. So it's they always say that the chess player thinks X amount of moves ahead.
Yeah.
So it was having that strategy to think, okay, we want to win this game, but these are going to be all the scenarios that you could face during these phases. And I thought that's a really interesting way of looking at it, especially in a fast-paced game like football. That you ultimately want to win, but these are all the strategies and stuff you have to face during the game. So again, then that got me thinking of, giving the players that information, giving the staff that information to think, okay, sometimes when you're looking to analyze a game or you're looking to analyze a situation, that, try and take into account the possible scenarios you could face. So it's not a surprise to you. It's not a shock. Have some, play the long game. You are, if you're confident you're going to win, but these are the problems you might face, but you can still win if you understand the strategy and the scenarios.
From a coaching perspective, it's very clear. Okay, if we attack in this way, then probably this will happen. But while you're saying it, from your recruitment perspective, it's also interesting. If I get this player, what does it do with my backup player that's already here, or what does it do with maybe a young player that cannot come to the first team, or how it's going to affect everything in the long? What's going to do with the atmosphere? So there's also a connection there, I think.
Always strategic. And I think if you've got that in your football club, it is to be, you want to bring some homegrown talent, which you should. If you've got that facility to bring top players through, then you should definitely utilize that. But also, if you've got an agreement where we want to try and at least bring one or two players into our first team each year, and then maybe we want to loan these sort of players out, so it can affect your recruitment process to say, right, okay, we think we have a top talent, we don't want to block his pathway, so we need this type of player to serve us to here, and long term we're looking to bring this player through. And so immediately, sometimes we take the emotion out of it and think, right, all of a sudden we change our perspective on recruitment and think, right, okay, this is for a long-term strategy. We want still to get the best out of immediate results, but we've also got an eye on, the potential coming through as well.
Yeah, and then that probably connects to what identity that you are working for at that point. Okay, what does this club stand for, or what is most important? Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely, and it just helps. It just helps, and like we say, it goes back to what we was talking about understanding your club.
Yeah,
you understand this is a strategy and the research, and this is how we're going to work. Then again, you would have you're not going to be too shocked of how to work in that environment.
Yeah.
You've already done yourself at home.
Yeah, it's easy to think about that, because if you know your environment, you're going to be in that meeting room with everybody there, and you will say, okay, I want to have this player. But David, we are a club that brings on youth. You can prevent those discussions if you know where you are. Yeah,
exactly. I know this before I come in, so this is. I have no real argument to that. Unless the strategy changes, then that's completely different. But I can't personally change the strategy myself if that's what we all agreed at the start of the journey.
And if it works the other way around as well, if you can show them that you understand the atmosphere, no, I want to have my faith installed in this young guy because we are this club. You automatically feel the support of the room, probably.
Yeah,
that they know that you understand where you are. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, well, you've been, well, like I'm going to say it again, but a lot of big clubs. You worked with a lot of big managers. Were there any specific moments or coaches that influenced you in your way of thinking in this industry or in football?
Yeah, been lucky enough to work in some really good environments, as you say, with some good staff and especially good managers and head coaches. So probably the two that stand out the most would be sort of Eddie Howe and Pochettino. Both outstanding coaches, both successful in their own individual rights. But it was I think when I looked at the type of, if I was ever going to go into a head coach's role, the way they worked with players was always interesting. They always looked more like teachers, right? They're teaching their players. It wasn't like an instruction, do this. It was like a way of teaching. So they expected the high demands. They expected, the hard work. They expected all the stuff you should have. But it was the way the connection they built with their, first and foremost, with their players.
Yeah.
So the players, that allowed the players then to buy into them.
Yeah.
And they got slightly different styles in terms of what they want to play, but also how they was around the club with other members of staff, which we spoke about earlier. So how they was with the cleaner, the chef, the receptionist, and how they were. It was just they had a nice way about them. So yes, as coaches, outstanding, excellent, top class, but also their manners of how they got everything, their messages across, and how they were with people. I would say there were two good influences on, the way that I like to operate myself.
Yeah. So I hear that is my assumption on it, that they didn't say what to do, but they learned how you could do it or how they thought you should do it.
Yeah, and it was sometimes a lot of it was sort of clever psychology. So players, I remember when players they would say, well, how do I get better? And they would never give them the total answer. Like, if you do this, and this, then you should be. It was okay. We'll open some doors. We'll give you some tools.
Yeah.
But you have to walk through it, and then they would want to see how the player responds, see how much he wants to do it. So it was a clever way of keeping people fresh, motivated, confident, but also, still delivering high quality coaching, but doing it in a way where all the answers were there. Because football, like you say, if it's in a big crowd and a big game, how much are they going to hear of the coaches? So them, they wanted, to put the emphasis on the players, but you have to think for yourself. When you're in this scenario, I'm not on a pitch with you, so you have to think of this.
Yeah. Did these guys, if I can hear it, they inspired you in this way of working? Did it change you in the field as well, or in that role as well?
Yeah, it did actually, because it sort of that was the way that I like to work, but I'd never seen it at that level.
Yeah.
So
you were more used to demanding guys that were like the manager; they were ruling the setting. Instead of incorporating everybody.
Yeah, and sometimes there is a need where you have to be a little bit tough and you have to have high demands.
Sure.
But the way they were as people, they found a way of getting the best out of people without doing that. And it was also the detail in their work. They were very, very clear, and also having the evidence to back it up. So if they was going to leave a player out from a team, then they would bring the player in, explain to him why, maybe have some stat stuff on the screen and say, this is where you are in training and where you are. Yeah. So you might not play for a couple of weeks, but I need you to get back up to that. And I think even though sometimes the players might not necessarily like it, they respect it because they can't argue. Yeah. It's not done on emotion. It's not saying you're not playing because you didn't play well last game. Yeah. As you understand, the players, first question they're going to ask is why. Then you go, well, this is the evidence. This is where you are. This is where we've been seeing. Yeah. And then try and get some understanding with that, and then the players can't argue. So then it's on the player to respond. Yeah. Okay, I want to get back in the team. I know how to get back in the team. I've seen where I am. I know where I can be. This is what I'm going to go and do. Yeah,
yeah. So clarity, that's the main factor in that.
Yeah, just very simple. Nothing. Very simple. Good understanding of people. Very clarity. Demanding of the high levels, but it was that clarity and that communication and the way they dealt with players and staff around them. That was the key at that level.
Right, so it's content or knowledge, yes, but again, the connection, the way you communicate is
absolutely
equally important.
Absolutely, and they're both different characters. Where Pochettino he had that Latin fire where he liked the human contact. He would often give you a high five, a hug, a cuddle, this sort of stuff. Where Eddie is more like a talker. He sit you down. He has a nice calm voice. He'd rather talk to you. Yeah, so we're both different people, but their styles were really good to watch.
Interesting. Yeah, I can imagine that it can inspire you as well. Okay, you have this gut feeling about the decision of a player.
Yes.
But then at one point you realize, okay, if I have to win this discussion or I have to convince somebody, you can think of the way they did that in daily decisions. Then you can help. It could help you in your sporting director's role or in any point in any role. But
absolutely,
it can help you for sure as well.
Absolutely, all good learning. Good learning.
Great. Okay, yeah. Well, you are a learner. That's what you said. I also read it about you. Every drive you put on a podcast. No, I'm not. I don't know if you do it every drive, but you try to take your time or use your time as efficient as possible.
Yes, yeah, I do, and that's driving sometimes. Especially when I was recruiting when I was younger, there wasn't the podcasts have become more relevant maybe over the last 2-3 years. But I always tried to listen and learn, and especially now with the variety of podcasts out there and the knowledge which is out there. When you're on a journey and you have to travel a period of time, why not listen to it? Why not try and learn something or find something that's interesting to pass your time?
And specifics that you are looking into now? You're always curious about new things. That's what we heard earlier.
Yeah.
So there's probably something there.
Yeah. So a lot of the stuff I was listening to was the High Performance podcast.
Yeah.
Which is
I'm trying to compete with them in the numbers of listeners, but I'm not there yet. I heard that just became the best listened podcast in England or something. They're huge. I listened to them as well. This is inspiring.
Yeah. But it's interesting how they started, because they started off, where they started during the pandemic, where it took time to build. They're in their third year now, so success to them. The reason why I like that one so much is because of the different guests they have on.
Yeah.
So it's not always football, which is good. There's not much football, to be fair. There's different sports, different businesses, different backgrounds. You get to listen to a type of different people, and I think that's what keeps my interest going. If it was just football people all the time, then it becomes the same thing.
Yeah, can imagine. Okay, so, and are you a reader? Do you have time to read?
Yeah, I love reading. I love reading. So I still go through this motion of I try and read if my day is quite busy. I try and at least read between 10 and 20 pages a night, just to help my brain.
Let's say a book a month.
Yeah, a book a month. Yeah, a book a month. I would try and read more, but obviously we have to live, we have to work. So,
What's the book that you're reading now?
So the book that I've read now was it was kind of a guy called Dr. Steve Peters. He done like the chimp paradox, but he's got a new book called Path Through the Jungle.
Okay.
It's about understanding sort of your mind and how it works, and they call it like the chimp, and then they call it the human part of your brain. But it's,
I know this.
Yeah, but he's got a second book out, so it's very heavy. So it's taking me a little bit longer.
It's not an evening book. You should do it in the morning when you have your cup of tea and when you're focused, probably.
Exactly. So that's not the one. But for my evening book, I've got one called The Immortals, Arrigo Sacchi.
Yeah.
When he had that great Milan side.
You're not the first one that's mentioning this book.
No,
we had several coaches already talking about this.
Yeah, I liked, again, I suppose I liked where he's come from as well, what he's done. Worked his way up through all the lower leagues, and that's so that was my book. Before that, I finished a book called Bill Walsh. He was an American football coach, called The Squad Take Care of Himself. Then there was another one called Mensch, which was I think it's Mench, where
the German way.
The German one. Yeah, that was a good one. Another one called The Edge, which again comes from different, looking at football mainly, but different sports, different backgrounds, different cultures. So I just find knowledge fascinating.
Interesting. Yeah, I can imagine that. Well, especially now you have some extra time.
Yes, yeah, that's the good thing. So I can still I still like to go and watch games. I still like to get out, obviously, when I can, go and meet people. But I try and put some time during the day to definitely get some reading in, because it makes me feel when you're reading something new, something knowledge, you can always add it to. I have a little portfolio. I add it into my different sections.
Nice.
So I listen to something that goes into that section. So when I go through the notes on my phone, I can just look and reference it.
Okay. So you keep like a knowledge diary on your phone where you put your notes.
Yeah. And I have it in different sections, so because everything's the same, so I don't have to scroll through loads. So I break it down into different sections to what I'm looking at.
Okay, great. Well, I try to write things down again to go offline. And I read down yesterday. Actually, I should start reading again. But book a month is it should be relatively easy. If you have a book of 300 pages, it's 10 pages a day.
Yeah,
that's my new goal for 2022. Again.
And by the end of the year, you'll be 12 books more knowledgeable.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I said it before. I listened to a lot of books, and then at one point I said I should read more. But then I know it was April, and I already went through 3 or 4 books while I was walking or in the car. So that's also a way. That's the advantage of these technologies as well.
And sometimes with a podcast, I think I'll try and listen to a podcast where I think, if I'm going to do a stop. So if I'm listening to this high performance podcast, for example, and I hear something, obviously I can't do anything. I'm driving. So I think, right, okay, I need to go over to a garage and maybe get make some notes or something.
Yeah. That's why I listen to books. Now I'm listening to a book for the second time because I probably missed while I was running or walking, whatever. I missed some things because of traffic. So you always hear new things. Yeah, interesting.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay, well, we've already been going on for an hour. I like your journey. That's also the reason why I've asked you. So because you've been through all these different types of work in football, and you're kind of combining it now in the end in like a director's role where all that knowledge comes together. And there's all these different types of environments and clubs and cultures that you've been experiencing as well, which almost seems like the natural fit to be a sporting director. And I hear that in this podcast we hear this as well. You know something about almost everything in football. That's interesting.
Yeah, I try and specialize in maybe 2 or 3, and then have a good understanding of the others around it. So for me, it's impossible to be a master of all of them. It's impossible, but to have maybe a stronger knowledge on some, and then have a good understanding on others, and try to increase the ones that maybe that need some work. I think that gives, especially when you look to go to these performance type roles like a sport director, the more knowledge you have, the better it is for you to do your job.
Yeah, and relates to me personally as well, because I've been in high performance coaching as well, and if I narrow down the area too much, my mind is going to look for different things unconsciously. So they're going to break the walls. I want new extra information, not only tactics or football. I need to know other stuff as well.
Yeah.
That's why I'm also jealous of guys that don't have that they can pick one thing and put all their focus on one thing. And I have to, I've learned to know myself, and maybe you have a little bit of the same. For me, it doesn't work. I need to have other things around me as well.
Yeah, and I think if you're of that mindset, where you're thirsty for knowledge, you're thirsty to be better and better yourself and increase that. I think, like, especially in performance, these type of brains, they never switch off. It's always hungry for more. So it's very hard, even sometimes, to even sleep, because you go to bed and you've got all these ideas and all this stuff racing around your head all the time. And it's as well as it can be exciting, sometimes it can be tiring.
But, well, that's also recognizable, also for my wife, but that's a different story. Okay, well, it's been great to talk to you, David.
Thank you for having me on. Appreciate
Who should we talk to next? That's my last question.
Yeah, there's a really good guy called Liam Bramley. He worked with Aston Villa, and he works for the under 23s as a performance coach, and he sort of leads that phase. Aston Villa is an exciting club at the minute.
Yeah, sure.
And he's someone that's he's a little bit different in his coaching, in the ways his journey, and he has he's learning. It's probably a little bit similar to mine, where he's very open-minded on certain things. So yeah, he'd be definitely a good guy to have on. Well,
let's see if we can get him on in the upcoming time. Sounds very interesting. Different approach. I like the maybe the little bit of the outliers of the industry. Let's call him like that.
Yeah, no, he has got that, and it's he's got good. And again, we're talking about the word values and environment. So that's another thing which is good in his coaching repertoire. He understands those elements really well.
Great. Okay, well,
great.
We'll look forward to talking to him as well. I want to thank you again, David. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your interesting journey. And I hope it continues at a nice club soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye.